Girlinghouse. Second by Mr. Ard. Any objection? So ordered. Item 9, resolution authorizing Ward 2 Water District of Livingston Parish, State of Louisiana, to proceed with the issuance and delivery of its not to exceed $15 million of water revenue refunding bonds in one or more series, otherwise providing with respect thereto. Mr. Jim Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also have with me Mr. Ben Bankston with Cruz and Associates, and I'd like to give them a little bit of recognition. It's usually underwriters that find these refundings for us, and they know that we're your client and they reach out to us, but they've got a computer up there with all your debt plugged in it, and every morning they look at the bond market, they look at the interest rates you're paying, and they spit out a spreadsheet that says this either works or doesn't work. So my hat's off to our friends at Cruz and Associates. They've been y'all's underwriter for about 20 years now, but a lot of these refundings that we get to do every year is because people like Mr. Bankston find them for us and they reach out to me, and then we come to you. On Ward 2 water, the savings is about $60,000 to $70,000 a year. Gross present value savings of about $2.1 million over the life of the bonds, which after all fees and expenses would wipe away about 6% of their outstanding debt. We're actually refunding 4 different old bond series that they have. And as Chairman Calvert and I talked about before the meeting, this resolution, because they're a political subdivision of the parish that was created by you all have to approve anytime they issue debt or anytime they pass taxes. So what you all are basically saying in this resolution is yes, go proceed, make sure it works. Most of you all know this, the way these refundings work is that if we can't save them the minimum savings required by the State Bond Commission, they don't pay us anything. We don't get paid, we don't get any fees or anything like that. And all of the savings that we talk about are net of everyone's fees and expenses. We have to present them that way to y'all.
We have a motion?
Yes.
Got a motion from Mr. King, second by Mr. Girlinghouse. Any objection? Item 10 is a resolution for the Livingston Parish Sewer District to proceed with issuance and delivery of its not to exceed $13,150,000 of revenue refunding bonds in one or more series and otherwise providing with respect thereto. Mr. Ryan.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. They have some bonds outstanding that we did in 2012. The current interest rate on those bonds is it's exactly 3.43%. If we could price these bonds today, we could lower that rate to about 2.7%. The estimated savings would be about $358,000 today.
It's over the life of the bond?
Yes, sir. And on all of these, we do not ever stretch out the maturity. It's the same number of payments.
Got a open motion by Mr. Ard, second by Mr. King. Any objection or so ordered? Thank y'all very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Scooter. You gonna be at Dennis Straight's meeting next week?
I will.
All right, I'll see you there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm thinking about moving into the city and running for mayor. What do you think?
I like it. No, I'm not in it.
Lord have mercy. Oh, my God. Can we edit that last section?
I threw that out there just
Parish President's report.
Me and
Want to
John.
welcome Parish President
Duke it out.
I'm not running.
Leighton Ricks.
Surprised I'm here, huh, Mr. Chairman?
No, I mean,
Good
No,
to
I'm
see you.
kidding. I'm kidding.
Good
I
to
don't have
see
any
you.
report tonight. Everything is good in the parish right now. I know Jennifer gave you a financial report. We'll discuss that next meeting, but everything's good, so I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Item 12, Livingston Parish Grant Section. Mr. Steve Kessler's here tonight to talk about the LGAP.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've had made available through us to Livingston Parish through the local grant program $58,800. We're proposing to use that money to replace the HVAC systems for the DPW building and for the animal control. Their systems are aging. The cost to keep them running is rising. Their efficiency is such that we've had to place window air conditions to supplement to keep the buildings cool. This is a no match amount of money, so it won't cost the parish anything. The parish will realize savings in the form of more efficient units and the use of less electricity for the window units. Secondly, we are proposing to modify the HVAC system in this building. When it was built, there's only one chiller in that unit, so if that chiller goes down, it will no longer function. So we're proposing to add ports to the system so that an emergency chiller could be connected to the unit so that the unit would continue to function until repairs are made. And lastly, we're proposing to buy portable radios for distribution to first responders, fire, police, to enhance communications. So I'm asking that we be allowed to apply for that grant.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make that motion to accept the recommendations of Mr. Kissler.
Got a motion by Mr. Gilat, second by Mr. Wascom. Any objection? So ordered. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Stevens.
Appreciate it. Item 13, this is for consideration to rescind the Livingston Parish Resolution number 21-012, adopted on January 14th, 2020, at a regular meeting of the Livingston Parish Council. Mr. Girlinghouse put this on because I voted in a manner that didn't let me put it on. I'm gonna take some of the blame for this. I don't think we let the discussion go on as long as possibly as we could have. There was a motion made, there was a substitute motion made in the second. And at that point in time, you know, Robert Rules calls it, we call for a vote. And I'm gonna be honest with you, the vote kind of surprised me, but at that point in time, it was over with. I did contact one of the councilmen after the meeting to inquire as to why, and in our discussion, I think we both came to the realization that I probably cut the discussion off and people were not as informed as they should have been. And so I'm gonna take some of the blame for that. And at this point in time, we'd like to open comment or public hearing. If somebody wants to talk about why we want to do it, let the public input, and then let the council talk about what we want to do.
Good evening, Councilman Talbert, Councilman. My name is Greg Akers. I represent Dynamic Development LLC, the developer of the Berry Ridge development. To be as brief as I possibly can, I appreciate the explanation of why this matter has appeared on the agenda for tonight, it having been previously unclear to me. First, I would urge the council to tonight to make sure that whatever action might be taken on this agenda item tonight is done pursuant to all the proper parliamentary procedures. Second, just an advisement to the council for your consideration. Since the waiver was granted on January 14th, Dynamic Development has already incurred over $10,000 of expenses and the time and effort that it's spent since January 14th in reliance on the waiver. If any action tonight is taken to turn their reliance to their detriment, that's going to be something that they will suffer. That not being nearly as important as what is at the crux of the issue, which is the drainage not only for the proposed Berry Ridge development, but also its immediately surrounding neighbors. I was not here on January the 14th, but I did watch the video, and the council, I saw several members did bring up several issues. I thought they were all properly addressed, but since we're here to further the discussion that was in some ways kind of cut off before matters were handled, that's all I have for now, pending information of what issues further discussion would be sought by any council members.
Anybody else in the public have any comment? Any comment from the council members?
Go ahead. The last meeting, I was going to ask a question. The reason I voted no was because I wasn't sure that if we took away the curb and gutter, if we allowed for subsurface drainage, removed the curb and gutter, that it would actually enhance the drainage of the subdivision. I was under the impression that with curb and gutter, that the way this subdivision was designed was that the water could funnel to the streets and then down the gutters and ensure that the water flowed from the back of the subdivision to the retention pond and then slowly into the road ditch and then slowly into that lateral ditch. I believe that, it's just my thought, that that would be the best proposal to drain this subdivision. To me, I've seen some of the subsurface drainage where, you know, the grades, you know, made an attempt to go to the subsurface catch basins, but that over time, the dirt and ground and everything shifted such that water would just puddle and pile all over the place and wouldn't actually flow as it was originally intended. And I think that that's very, very important in an area that doesn't have a current funded gravity drainage district. You know, to make sure that that water gets to the road, and then, you know, to that retention pond, and then to that other Fayard Road ditch, and then down to that lateral. So I just kind of wanted to say that, and that's why I was voting no.
Could I address that as engineer for the project on that? Because the question you bring up is a good question, and one of the things that we're doing, one of the reasons I prefer this without curb and gutter is just what you said. Maintenance of that curb and gutter is critical. I have seen several pictures. In fact, I drove around after the rain Tuesday. I saw several areas in Denham Springs where curb and gutter is active, where the curb and gutters are holding water because either there's dirt now blocking the curb and gutter or whatever else. So one of the things that in this particular, and if you'll hand out, there's just a few of the pictures that I've shown of some of the curb and gutter, if y'all don't mind. But it has always been my experience that curb and gutter, to me, ends up with a lot more issues, whereas if I have my road set high enough where I can shed water off my road into the green space area and then to an inlet, I have a lot better receiving of that drainage. In addition, with this subdivision, we are proposing to put a drain inlet on every single lot line, which means we'll have more entry points to our subsurface than we would have with curb and gutter. We'll actually come close to having double the number of entry points than we would with a curb and gutter system. So we should be able to enter the water much more efficiently than we would with a curb and gutter system. So just to kind of answer the question of how we're resolving that we can get the water in there, I've been a bigger fan of water that can sheet flow, make your road high enough where the water will get off the road into the grass and then into the drain. Again, much like the drain inlet you have right out in front of your building right here, that's what that's designed to do. I like, if I'm going to have any water, get it off the road first. Curb and gutter, I found, tends to hold water on the road, if it's going to hold water.
Mr. Chairman, and again,
Yeah.
you designed it assuming that what you wanted was the way to go, and that doesn't meet our ordinance. That's why I fought against it the other night.
I do understand that.
It's kind of irrelevant what you think is the right way to do it when the ordinance says to do it a certain way.
That is true. However, that is also how things can be proposed forward to say, hey, maybe this is something
They can,
worth
and when you
looking
go to
at.
ordinance committee meeting and you present that and say, we'd like to change the ordinance.
Well, I'm not familiar
I
with the ordinance.
just jump in
but-
there and go, hey, I'm gonna design stuff that doesn't meet the ordinance. Cause then it makes me mad.
I do apologize for
I
making
think
you
you
mad.
understand that.
I do understand that. You are
I think it's a
aggravated
great
with me.
development.
I do understand that.
I do have one question. Your
Sure.
gentleman said since we approved this, which I didn't vote for,
Correct.
the other night, that you spent $10,000. Doesn't this have to go back to planning because the waiver wasn't okayed on the,
Well, technically, Mr. King, if we rescind the waiver, then the plans will have to be redrawn with curb and gutter.
and they weren't with the
The
servitude?
plans already have to be redrawn with the servitude because the waiver wasn't ready.
And they
So,
have,
and I think they were would
Either
be
way.
drawn, and they were submitted to the parish.
so,
Already?
yeah,
They
we
wanted to
have,
submit the parish engineer. However, the parish engineer was made aware that this was up for reconsideration fairly early in the process. And to my understanding, the parish engineer decided not to review the plans until after this night, so as not to run up any cost associated
Right,
with
I-
plan
that's
review until
good.
after this was
That's a
done.
good thing.
Right.
The
these
other
costs are not
question
to
is,
perish.
I mean, there could have been $10,000 costs that were, incurred, but they could have been incurred in mobilization, which would occur anyway, whether those costs are directly related to a design change, or
Right.
something that had to be litigated. My biggest concern is that, there were, given the whole circumstance that existed that night, and not casting any shade on anybody, but I believe if our current parish attorney would have been here, he would have given us guidance with respect to, if we grant this waiver, then we've opened ourselves up to have everybody who wants to build a subdivision without curb and gutter to look at that, bring that to us, and our hands would kind of be tied along those situations. We're aware every time we grant a waiver that we open ourselves up, but in this particular thing, when you look at the cost of development for curb and gutter versus the cost of development without curb and gutter, that I have a feeling that if we'd start getting a lot of requests for waivers, and everybody would be pointing to this, and we would end up in court plenty when we kept saying no. So, I mean, that was my main consideration in my discussion, was that we have opened up Pandora's box if we continue to let this go forward, that we might as well amend our ordinance and eliminate the need for curb and gutter, because we're gonna continue to put ourselves in a bad position if we do this. And so, that was, I'm not saying whether the curb and gutter works better or doesn't work better. To me, logically, curb and gutter does work better, but I'm not an engineer. I have talked to some floodplain people and some engineers over the past couple of weeks, and the feeling is that to definitively say that something will drain better without curb and gutter is probably a stretch.
Okay, the issue is are we rescinding or we reconsidering? What are we doing? We're doing something, I'm assuming. Do we have a motion?
Well, the item on the item on the floor is that we granted a waiver. So the item, what we're trying to do tonight is remove the resolution that granted the waiver.
So do we have a motion?
We don't at this point in time.
But I wanted to say something, because
Okay.
it wasn't brought up. Look, I agree that it sets a bad precedent. If you grant this, then you're kind of caught in that rut. But I'm not, I didn't bring it forward for everyone else. I brought it forward for myself. Everyone here has the right to vote how they want to. They're the one who has to deal with it and the one that has to live with it. So this isn't this is kind of about how I voted and how, looking back, not to paraphrase you, not to throw shade, but I felt the conversation should have went on a little longer. I know I'm going to make a motion to rescind. So, but having said that, I do agree with you. At some point, we write an ordinance. People need to present that ordinance to us, that will present whatever they want in line with review of the ordinances, not write it and think, oh, well, I can maybe get this waiver. And I understand that. That's an approach you can have, and maybe you can learn things that way. But it also says noteworthy to say this. I caught the offhand threat there, that you've incurred this much debt or $10,000 over time, and that was an offhand threat there.
That was the wrong way to do it.
Yeah. But either way, it's not going to change on how I'm going to vote on this. So I make a motion to rescind.
Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I rise to point of order.
Okay.
The motion just proposed is out of order, because this motion cannot be applied to an action that cannot be reversed. This action can't be reversed because 2 weeks ago, this body gave permission to do away with curbs and gutters. The action of spending money to make this happen cannot be reversed. Money is gone, which makes this motion out of order per Robert Rules of Order. Example given in Robert Rules of Order is if you bought paint and painted a house, that cannot be reversed. If they design that and spent their money, they can't get the money back unless you give it to them. That makes this motion out of order to rescind the motion.
Well, I'm gonna take exception with the fact that they spent money that cannot, that
Mr.
was,
Mr. Chairman, you can only rule, you can't debate it, you can only rule on the motion, and if you rule against this out of order motion, you have to give me something of what you ruled on, from the Robert Rules of Order.
The gentleman's correct. In general, you can't rescind or reconsider a motion if action has been done and can't be undone. That's the exception. So you've already granted a contract and they bought $100,000 worth of supplies, you could be exposed for that. Or if something that's already can't be done, already put in place that can't be taken out. This item's come up more than once before this council, where you rescinded a variance before, and similar damages have been alleged to have happened. So you do have some exposure here, that's true. But I don't think this subdivision has already been built or very much has been done that can't be undone.
Okay, so, Mr. Moody, in your legal opinion,
look,
how would we move forward knowing that I want to rescind?
Well, first of all, the chairman, if he needs to rule on his point of order. So it'd be the chairman's rule to sustain it or reject it.
based on your advice, based on what you just said, I'm gonna reject his objection.
And then you need to see if there's a second to the motion.
Do we have a second? Yeah, we got a second to Tracy's motion from Scooter.
Okay, I didn't hear that.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I rise to point of order again.
Okay.
This is gonna take 2/3 of the vote and not a majority.
Why is it gonna take 2/3 of the vote?
I read from the Robert Rules of Order book. Requires 2/3 of a vote of members present to rescind, unless it has been at the same meeting. This hasn't been done at the same meeting.
So you're telling me it's gotta be a six, we gotta have six?
You have to have 6 votes, 2/3.
I'm gonna take issue with that. There's another exception, and it is if you've given notice at a following meeting, if you've given notice of the intent to the rescission, then it can be by a majority vote.
Not at the following meeting, given notice at the same meeting. Notice has to be given at this particular motion to be rescinded at the same meeting.
This is, you got notice for this meeting where you're taking the motion to act.
It wasn't at the meeting, no, it wasn't at the same meeting.
I'm gonna reject your point of order based on the parish attorney's recommendation. So we have a motion to rescind and a second by Mr. King.
Discussion.
We have any, okay, we have discussion.
Yeah, again, this came up last meeting. Gentlemen had some good plans for drainage. We were deciding on what the best thing to do. This particular subdivision is located in Mr. Delat's district. So I turned to Mr. Delat and I said, what'd you want to do? He was asking for 2 waivers, if I think one was the curb and gutter and one was a easement. And Randy said, I'm good with one, which was, you was okay with that one, but you didn't want to do the easement. I don't see why we wouldn't continue. I just want to make sure that I'm talking about the right item here. This is Mr. Randy's district. He knows the area. He knows the subdivision. He's fine with it. I just want to, I am right there, correct?
You're right
Okay.
there.
Mr.
And I
Chairman,
sit on this board, I sit on this board many times giving waivers. We got people that's voting against us more waivers now. And it's our ordinance.
This is a major change to our building code.
No, it's not the
It's
building code.
waiving curb and gutter, which has been
Not the
required
building
for
codes.
19 years.
Not building code.
Not
Well,
building
you know what
code.
I mean, the
I call it the
ordinance for the,
Ordinance.
yeah, so I mean, that's the thing, is that it's not just about your district,
I call the question.
it's about every district.
But it's the
Call
parish,
the
it's
question.
the parish, and it's not a subdivision. We the council of the parish, not a council of subdivisions. And that's
Right.
all we want to do here. Guys, the way to get out of this is get back to where we was at 8, 10, 12 years ago. Leave this administrative stuff to administrators, and we do the legislative stuff.
I think
That's
you're
the
right.
way.
I do agree with that, Randy, for sure.
I'm not falling out with anybody. I
No,
want you to
I understand.
understand that.
Yeah.
But I have to represent my people, and I can't, in good conscience, vote to know the whole water on them, and I can get the water off of them. I can't do that in good conscience.
Ms. Morgan, will you come up here and assure Mr. Delat that the design of this subdivision in your review will not impact the neighbors of this subdivision, because our ordinance basically won't let that happen?
So I have not reviewed the drainage impact study yet. That comes later after the preliminary. But yes, in the drainage impact study, they will be required to, if any water was already coming onto that property, they have to take that water on when they build their property. They're not allowed to stop drainage. That's against the law. That's a state law.
The question I
So-
was asking is, when I watch the news in Baton Rouge and I see all the streets flooded and curb and gutter, and this is in the country, this ain't in the city, and I know the branches and the trees and the leaves that's gonna fall in the gutter, the water's gonna be the street is the canal, the street is the drainage. It's just good common sense. And why would you not use good common sense when you're intelligent, when you're a businessman? When, you know, why, I don't understand that.
So, I mean, so basically the law is gonna require that the water that comes on there continues to come on there and be handled, and you can't negatively impact the neighbors with the construction of the subdivision.
Correct.
That
And
wasn't the
all of that
question.
will-
I mean, I understand, but the implication was that the reason we don't need curb and gutter is because it's gonna help the drainage, and you've watched the people around there suffer, and I'm gonna tell you, there is a.
Have you been on Fayard Road? Have you seen the woods that's gonna be in, the leaves and the trees and the branches that's gonna be in the curb?
Gravity One did work on Amy Church Road and turned a culvert down 1019, and there is a catch basin that every time it rains hard, if somebody doesn't go clean the leaves off the top of that catch basin, which would be the same design that exists in a subdivision that doesn't have curb and gutter, the water just stacks because it has no place to go. So, I mean, I'm just telling you, there are advantages to everything and there are disadvantages to everything, and to imply that drainage will be improved without curb and gutter is not a statement that you can back up, because it just doesn't, you cannot guarantee what people are gonna do with the catch basins in their front yard or that servitude throughout the history of that development. But the parish absolutely can tell you what's gonna happen along those curbs and gutters of those streets. So,
Can we ask how they come up with $10,000 expense?
I mean, look.
I mean, I'd like to know what they spent the money on.
I can guess, attorney, or redesign,
Yeah, you're
paperwork,
probably right.
engineer, I can guess.
But, I mean,
But they would have to prove that it was a
well,
problem.
I mean, look, there's some costs that are gonna be associated, no matter whether the design is with curb and gutter or without curb and gutter. You know, so if the waiver would not have been granted, the redesign would have to occur anyway. So that's not a cost that is something that is debatable. So, you know, the question is, have they started construction without curb and gutter that cannot, so, and look, I've built a couple subdivisions and done a little bit of dirt work. That's hard for me to imagine that you turned in something 2 weeks ago and you've already done something that cannot be undone by putting curb and gutter in the deal. You want to comment on that?
Well, yeah, I was just going to answer a little bit of the question that came up. So I do know some of the money has been spent with us, in that when we got out of that meeting, we turned around and we redesigned the lots to take out the 15-foot easement. And now we will have to redesign it again to take into account the curb and gutter. So it'll be 2 designs instead of 1. Now, like I said, I don't have a dollar figure on that. I'm not going to even try to put a dollar. I'm just saying that work has been done. The second thing I'd like to approach is, you are right, and you say that both curb and gutter and both drain inlets can plug up. Absolutely. One of the things that we were doing as a mitigation measure on this, though, remember, is we are putting almost twice as many inlets for these yard drains. We were doing one on every single lot line, whereas on a curb and gutter, we would not have as many inlets. So our drainage would be better because we simply have more points of entry into our subsurface drainage.
So they, just the 2x2
Yeah, the
that gets
drainage.
leaves open? I've never seen a curb and gutter stop up where you couldn't get something going through it, but I've seen those stop up.
Okay, so we have a motion
But I
and
was
a
just answering
second.
the questions.
All right,
Yes,
thank you very
sir.
much. Are we ready to vote? Is discussion over with?
Yeah, I'm done. I'm ready.
Nobody from the public? Ms. Sandy, would you call the roll? And so so we clarify, a yes vote rescinds the waiver that was granted at the meeting 2 weeks ago. And a no vote allows the waiver to stand. So let's go ahead, Ms. Sandy, would you call the roll?
Mr. Garlinghouse.
Yes.
Mr. Matt.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Wascom.
No.
Mr. Ard.
No.
Mr. Talbot.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. McMorris.
No.
Mr. Delat.
No.
Motion carries 5-4. Thank you. Item 14, introduction of ordinance, amend chapter 22 environment, section 22-22, specific prohibitions,
Thank
stating
you
the
all for your
time
time,
usage of
John.
outside
Appreciate it.
business
We
systems
appreciate it.
by Mr. John Wascom.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. I had requested this be on the agenda. This is a problem that I've been having, and I believe which other areas in the parishes have had the problem as well. And maybe because of the COVID virus, with businesses having not to allow customers come inside their building, they tend to be moving the party outside, and maybe that's has caused some of the problems. I'm not sure, but it hasn't just been isolated in my area. I know there's places that we've had in the past. I know Mr. Scooters had one at a place, and there's other areas. Businesses are setting up public address sound systems, which is an amplification of music outside of a business. And maybe it's to bring the party outside, maybe it's to blast music to the road to get people to come in. I'm not sure the reason. But after a certain hours, when stores and restaurants and people tend to go home and want to go to bed and enjoy time alone, we've had noise ordinance. We have noise ordinances in place that have required police officers to use decibel readings, and I find that to be very unenforceable, because when you sit there with the decibel reading, you can't really record it, and it doesn't necessarily hold up in court. And which was it, the truck making the noise or something? So it's a problem. So I've put together with Miss Sandy something that I think it may not eliminate the problem completely, but what it basically does is it requires any business that has speakers located outside that at, I think we have 9 o'clock on the ordinance, is that what it is? 10 o'clock, that the speakers have to be turned off. It's just at a point where people are just, it's interfering with their quality of life in their homes. If you want your speakers to play music, put them back inside. And I think that may not eliminate all the problems from people pulling up in cars and blaring music and hooping and hollering outside, but this would eliminate, I think, the big bass that travels distances with sound pressure level into people's homes. It goes through walls. And I don't know if the chairman would like, but there may be some people here to speak in favor of this ordinance, if you want to give them just a couple of minutes, but that's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
The public hearing will be, Sandy's gonna read by title and set the public hearing. It'll be the president of the council. I was trying to get away from debating ordinances on introduction, but I know you wanted to talk about this one. Sandy, would you read by title and set the meeting time?
Proposed ordinance 21-01. This is an ordinance to amend chapter 22 environment, section 22-22, specific prohibitions, and amend by adding section 81, adding provisions for the use of outside sound systems of the code ordinances intended for the parish of Livingston. The public hearing will be at 6 p.m. on February 11th.
Okay, now, John, we've introduced it. That's really all we have to do. I'm gonna grant you the courtesy. If you've got some constituents who would like to speak on it, I would ask that you can bring them up, and if they would make it brief, we'll.
If there's something that I did not say that you need to add, but we're gonna vote on this ordinance at the next meeting. Am I correct?
Right, next
So I hate to ask, but if you want, if you see something needs to be changed, let me know, or come back at the
They've
next
got time
meeting.
between now and then. yeah.
Between now and then, so.
All right. Thank y'all for coming.
I would like to say, could be considered like and either way, I don't know, did you gonna make it 10 o'clock every day of the week? You gonna extend those hours on the weekends?
No, 10 o'clock, I mean, even the restaurants close their patios down at, at 10 o'clock or.
And I'm not saying, look, I'm good I'm good with it. You just said.
Look,
I'm good with it as it is.
And I will add to this, if somebody wants to come and set up a sound system outside, that put in there that this councils will have complete ability to grant waivers for weddings or for special events if they're needed. I mean, you can't just,
I give them all the time at the fairground.
okay,
so-
for a fairground,
All the
exactly,
time.
you know?
Let's,
Our biggest concern is, and I'm
can you
sorry,
state your name and address,
Bonnie
please?
Parnell, 7777 Denham Drive, Denham Springs, Louisiana. Our problem is that since COVID started, we have noise blasting from a shopping center going into our homes till 2 a.m. in the morning. The sheriff's office is doing nothing because there's nothing for them to do, according to them. We're being told there's no noise ordinance, no nuisance ordinance, and we're like, there are. They're on the books. I'm reading them. They're not enforcing it. Mr. John is trying to make it to where we have something that they can enforce that makes it shut down at least at some particular time to where at least we can get some sleep.
And so, yeah, I understand, appreciate that.
Okay?
Yeah, we get it. I hear
We'll
you.
vote on this at the next meeting.
And that's fine. I'll be at the
I
next meeting.
understand completely. I was just bringing.
Well,
You stirred up trouble,
I
what
guess-
you doing?
I guess,
Now, at February 11th meeting, we can bring a whole crew of people for you if you
I
like.
would like to add that this is not gonna shut the business down. They just have
No,
to
we're
turn
not
the
wanting
noise
our
off.
business to shut down.
Yeah,
That's
they
the
just have
thing.
to turn the
We
noise
want them to
outside.
be neighborly
The
and
outside noise
considerate.
has to go off.
That's all we're wanting is some consideration and to be neighborly.
all right, thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
So only question I have here, is this gonna be considered for like the ballpark at Cooley? Will we rent out the ballpark for weddings, like you said a while ago?
Well, you know,
So that would be the same thing, 10 o'clock at night, you're gonna shut it down?
They just have to get a permit for
Have
it.
to get a permit,
I give them at the fairground all the time.
okay?
Yeah, I think there
Thanks for the
there are
clarification.
there are exceptions to the rule. This is a situation that that we currently have an ordinance that deals with decibels with respect to property lines and public
Understand
spaces. And it's felt, or Mr. Wascom feels, that if we just eliminate outside amplified music at a certain time of night, it's pretty cut and dry. And so that's the reason,
Without reading
that's the
too much
reason,
into it,
that's the
yeah.
reason for this introduction of this ordinance. And if you have some negative or whatever, some more positive, look, we did poll some restaurant owners that currently have patios, and that's kind of how 10 o'clock came about. We made sure that businesses that were, shutting down, that we weren't negatively impacting certain areas, and that was kind of the thought process.
Seems
But,
about right.
so we'll debate this, in 2 weeks.
All right, cool.
Item 15, adopt a resolution.
Can I just say something right quick?
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Krista Carpenter, and I live on C. Carpenter Lane in Denham Springs, and I live south of where this bar is, a couple bars. It's so bad, and there's a patch of woods and Magnolia Beach Road that's in between my house and there. It is so bad, our windows rattle. They vibrate. To 2 o'clock in the morning. On January the 16th, it was from 5:40 on Saturday until 2:02 a.m. to be precise. My mirror on my nightstand, it rattles, and you can't sleep. I have bought shag rugs to put under my bed. I have bought, it hasn't came in yet, these acoustic curtains, which is $400 and $500 to put on trying to just reduce the sound just a little bit. And I'm looking into buying panels to put up on my bedroom wall. It's just very frustrating. And we have called the cops many, many times. The deputies have came out. They have been very nice. They said they have done all that they can do, but to keep calling. One will say that we can file charges for disturbing the peace when you get somebody out there at 2 o'clock in the morning. They say they can't do it. And that we need to contact the parish council. And I want to thank Mr. Wascom because he is always calling us back and trying to help us with this matter. So I just
How about
hope
that, guy?
that we
I
can
just didn't know
do.
who she was talking about.
Yeah, but
Thank
if I
you.
need to start texting you at 2 a.m., I will. And I would invite
Oh, she
anybody.
does.
Hey, I'll invite anybody to come sit on my porch. It'll probably happen tonight too. It's every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. I'm dealing with
Yeah,
this.
that particular shopping center, I think there's a nickname for it with those three
Well, I mean, I
bars.
can't say it, but yeah, but I would, hey, y'all can come sit on my porch and I'll provide hot chocolate or coffee and cookies or whatever,
Oh,
thank you.
and listen to this.
Thank you, ma'am.
So we appreciate it.
I think she's right there, John. If you get enough calls about something, you'll do something.
I've called over a dozen times.
All right. So this drug out way longer than we did, but
Scooter
Mr. Wascom had asked
Thank you,
earlier
Mr. Talbot.
if he could
Thank you,
have
John.
some-
I think that'll help a lot.
Item 15, adopt a resolution to establish a three-way stop at Wimbledon Drive in Hampton Court, located in Westminster State Subdivision in Council District 6. Mr. McMorris.
Yes, if you look at the map here, you'll see it's a long stretch here. It's a bus stop right here, so people's coming around this curve and whenever they're picking up the kids at the bus stop, I mean, people's just blowing down.
I'll second Mr.
So,
McMorris's.
I'll make a motion that we'll accept the,
So we got a motion by Mr. McMorris and a second by Mr. Delat. Any objections? None so ordered. Item 16, adopt a resolution to name an unnamed road Scooter Lane, located in Pea Ridge, located off of Pea Ridge
I had
Road.
nothing to do with this,
I love
guys,
it.
not
That's
anything.
I definitely
And
want to
Council
second that.
District
definitely wanna
9,
second
James Mack.
Shane, that's how you think about me all the time.
Dave, you gonna allow
He
this?
has been being nice to me lately. No, for real, I think it's a good idea to name these private roads. Because
After school?
you got all the mailboxes out there on the Pea Ridge and everything, and you got these people that live down the gravel road, and like an emergency situation, they really don't know exactly what house. This is a good thing. We need to make a motion that we name this unnamed road. This is gonna remain private, and it's just gonna help, law
Yes.
enforcement versus people.
Is that a motion?
So we got a motion by,
Scooter's gonna
motion by
second
Mr.
Scooter
Mack
Lane.
and a second by Mr. Scooter, wanting to name the road Scooter. So any objection by the council? So ordered. Item 17, adopts a resolution to name a servitude Charade Place Extension for 911 purposes and addressing located off Charade Place in Council District 3, Mr. Maurice Scooter King.
Yeah, I mean, y'all read it in the packet. It's a private servitude, and they said they ran out of 911 addresses. I don't know how you run out of 911
Well,
addresses.
if you don't
Start with
think
wrong
development's
number.
gonna happen in the back and you kind of
But
space
this
it
is
out.
halfway down the road to the left.
Well,
So,
who knew they were gonna develop that on the
Had
back?
no
I second
idea.
that. So is that a motion to accept?
Well, but no, wait 1 second. So we get these named roads that are they're very close to the same name, and we're hearing some backlash from some 911 people that this is causing an issue with the police, the fire, different things, getting to these. I think Gary had one in his district that we changed. Didn't you have one in yours that we changed? Might have been for this reason. But I mean, I don't oppose the Cherie Place extension, because it's the only road off of that road right now. But what happens when they put Cherie Place North? Then they start getting confused. Is that something we should maybe table and see if there's a different name they could use? What do you think, Sandy? I mean, what did they
This
say?
is a time-sensitive matter for the man
Okay.
that's asking for it.
All right, then I'll make the motion.
Okay, so we have a
They
motion.
can't
by-
find him, it's on him.
We have,
Clear it with the
What?
address.
Yeah, right, I know they okayed it,
That
but
would be a
it's,
good idea to take to the ordinance,
yeah.
to look into that.
yeah.
So we got a motion by Mr. King, second by Mr. Girlinghouse. Any objection? None so ordered. Mr. Girlinghouse, you heard Mr. Ard's recommendation that the ordinance committee ought to look up maybe defining the fact that you can't use the name and some
Some
add-on
extension or
part
some
behind it to
park or
future
court or-
roads. So that's just something that we can consider in the
Why is
future.
it on there?
Item 18, resolution to add both Baptiste Drive and Nicholas Drive located in Council District 1 for consideration to the priority road capital overlay list. This is by Councilman Ard.
Yes, I got a call on this road, and I don't often get roads in my district that are short. This is two very short roads. Loggers come in there, it turns into gravel road after about 600 yards, and they kind of tore it up, but there is another entrance, which I'm gonna talk to DPW about, planning about possibly making them utilize the other entrance now, so,
I second Mr. Orr's motion.
Okay, so we got a motion by Mr. Ard, a second by Mr. Delat. While we're here, does any other councilman have a road they want to add to the list? While we're on this subject? None? Is there any objection to this motion? So ordered. Item 19, waiver request of section 25-27 driveway culverts and/or subsurface drainage to allow subsurface drainage in the subdivision. The first one would be Summer Breeze subdivision.
I'm good with it.
Ms. Sonia Austin, 10250 Emerald Drive, Denham Springs, located in Council District 3. The second is Montrose subdivision, Mr. David Silva on 13110 Montrose North, located in Council District 5, and Keith DeSalle, 13111 Montrose North Drive, located in Council District 5. That's in Mr. Bubba Harris's district. Mr. Harris, are you good?
I'm good.
So we have a motion by Mr. King and a second by Mr. Harris to consider all three.
Yep.
Is there any objection?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm gonna vote yes, but I wanna know what's the difference, because I don't really know. Isn't there an ordinance on this?
Okay.
Wait, what's the,
The
So-
difference, and this and what happened on 13. This is giving them a waiver, right?
Yes, it is.
it is.
And I
Can
think,
you
I
explain
think
why we
on,
did that?
on all, okay, so this council passed an ordinance a while back that said if a subdivision was not designed for subsurface drainage, that you couldn't put it in. However, DPW has gone out and looked at these particular situations, and every one of these things that we allow to happen after the fact have been approved by DPW. I know where you're going. I mean, this is one of those ordinances, along with the trailer park and the named subdivision ordinances that come up periodically that we grant waivers. Now, Mr. Delat, I have in my district, if I have a drainage issue, I typically ask the people to get an engineer for evaluation. In some areas, they allow DPW to make the evaluation. Pretty much every time, the culverts are oversized to allow for the additional drainage of water. But yeah, it is a waiver, and that's what it's for. So, do we need to call the roll on this?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Sandy, would you call the roll?
Mr. Garlinghouse.
Yes.
Mr. Matt.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Wascom.
Yes.
Mr. Ard.
Yes.
Mr. Talbert.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. McMorris.
Yes.
Mr. Delat.
Yes.
It was unanimous anyway.
There's a reason for that.
I understand. I got
I
you.
know what the court record is. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, I'll say that,
Motion and second.
The motion of Mr. King and the second by Mr. Harris.
this particular ordinance, it predates, it's the previous council. This was Mr. Talbert's ordinance.
It was, I mean, it was. And
Guys, the reason we're in trouble is because we're doing things administratively that I don't think we should be doing. And I'm one of 9, so.
The whole thing on this one was that it was being handled administratively. They'd call in the DPW and they'd ask the parish president, and he'd go, yeah, tell them to go
Well,
ahead and put the
Randy,
culverts in.
and look, I don't disagree with what you talk about. Some things that we handle might be administratively. However, the only person that can, if this council creates a law, the only person that can allow someone to get a waiver on that law is this council.
No, that's not true.
Well-
That's only true if you make that a law, that the only person can do that. That would be true.
Okay, well, we'll discuss this further, okay? So, item 20, waiver request of section 125-3, prohibitions and restrictions of use to allow permitting of a mobile home, manufactured home, which will be located in a named subdivision. This is Mr. R. Now, Mr. R, if I understand, this is the first time that there's tried to get a permit in Little Flock.
First time in Little Flock, I went and rode through there. There's already a trailer there. It looks like it's been there many, many years. I mean, it's been there for a long time. All the surrounding property around it has trailers on it. So,
I second it.
So we got a motion by Mr. Ard, a second by Mr. Delat. Is there any objection to this waiver? Do we need to call the roll, Mr. Delat? No objection? So ordered.
It's a different waiver.
I got you. Board resignations and
You
reappointments.
understand the logic behind this one?
Tourism Board. Mr. McMorris, you have a resignation and a board appointment?
That's correct. David Richardson, having some major health issues, so, he's, turning in a resignation letter to us. And, we have a appointment that we want to make is Kim McCon Idell, and we have a letter of recommendation from Clay Shea Snyder, the state representative.
I second that.
Okay, so we've got a motion to accept the resignation and an appointment by Mr. McMorris and a second by Mr. Delat. Is there any objection? Thank you. Item B, Fire Protection District Number 2, Mr. Delat.
I'd like to replace Mr. Charles Bennett. He's done a fantastic job. Nothing about his workmanship or anything, but there's a lot of other people who want a chance to be on this board, and I want to replace him with Charles McKinney from Holden, Louisiana.
Okay, so we got a motion by Mr. Delat, we got a second by Mr. Girlinghouse. Is there any objection? So ordered. Gravity District.
Mr. Chair, I think
Yes.
we need to ratify somebody. Is that true, Mr.?
Do you have a ratification also?
Yeah. Says they're waiting on a minute.
Or well, maybe not, then I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think we got 2 ratifications, we're waiting on the minutes for the city of Killian. Okay, or, okay. Item C, Gravity Drainage District Number 5, Mr. Girlinghouse.
Yes, Stacy Yon's term is expired, so I'm just make a motion to reappoint him back to the position.
Hold up, before you make that motion.
Okay.
I'd asked Ms. Sandy to hold up on mine, but I finally got in touch with everyone. Mr. Jimmy Dunlap has served on that board for over 30 years. And I finally talked to him today and he's done. So I would like to appoint Mr. Tony Acord in his spot.
Okay, so Sandy, you got the 2 names? So we got a motion by Mr. Girlinghouse, second by Mr. King on those 2 appointments to Gravity 5.
If you need me to say, I'll make a motion to appoint both Mr. Yon and Mr. Acord.
Nice.
I'd like to say something at this time, just because I know Mr. Jimmy, he served on this council, and he also was a public works director. And I think he does a wonderful job in anything he does. I know he's looking forward to that retirement.
Yeah.
So no objection? All right, thank you. We can move forward. 22 committee reports. Citizen Drainage Committee, we've got 2 appointing members that need to be appointed, and I was negligent in talking to the parish president until tonight, so he's not ready to appoint yet, but I think Mr. R is ready to appoint.
Yes, I'd like to appoint Mr. Joey Sibley. Mr. Joey is a councilman here in the town of Livingston, and he also serves on the Drainage District Board out here. So I spoke with him, and he's honored for the, so I'll make a motion for Mr. Joey Sibley.
You got a motion?
I don't think.
We don't have to, it's not a motion, you just gotta appoint that person.
And Sandy, you should already have all this information off from the other.
Can I have some
person.
discussion
He
on
said
that?
it's all the same.
Yeah, Randy, go ahead.
I was wondering if this would be a good time to send the information to the members that are appointed, that they are appointed to this, you know, and.
Was that the last appointment? We still
Well, I
waiting
mean,
on one?
Layton's got an appointment, we can go ahead and send everything out, and Randy, since this was your committee, why don't you call the first meeting, and then, you know, you can set up here as the chairman, and then get them organized, let them vote, and then you can step back and let the committee run their deal, so, I think everybody good with that situation?
They would elect officers at their first.
They would do that at their first meeting. Item B, Finance. Jeff.
Finance, we had our meeting tonight. Ms. Jennifer said that all the tax money coming in it still looks extremely well. And I actually have some notes here, and Scooter might be able to help me on some of this, but we actually got a credit back on our Go Mesa money. I don't know where my notes went.
It's about didn't you say 700 plus?
$250,000 that we got back that can actually be used on drainage projects.
Right.
So, I mean, basically, you have any little small projects that you want to try to put together and get with Miss Jennifer, I'm sure it's going to be a fist fight over it, but,
I would love to see the drainage committee go ahead and use to set the master drainage plan with it, maybe.
I had to check
idea.
and see
That
if
could help
that's,
everybody.
she did reiterate that this is probably gonna be the last time we
Yeah.
get money due to the fact.
Because of oil and gas.
So would
Would
it be inappropriate for this council to pass a resolution at this time asking the administration to set aside that $250,000 to provide the Citizens Drainage Committee revenue to proceed with a drainage study? Ms. Sandy?
I'm good with that.
Would that be, Mr. Moody, would that be appropriate at this time, since we're talking about finance?
I think so.
So would somebody like to Mr. R make a resolution? Motion on the resolution, second by Mr. King, to ask the administration to set aside the $250,000 rebate on the donation money
Right.
aside for the Citizens Drainage Committee to work on a master drainage study. Because, look, let's face it, they might need, that won't pay for the whole thing, but it might work match on a grant. So, I mean, let's, you know,
Yeah,
let's,
that's exactly right.
they'll have money to match that they might not necessarily have.
The finance question, I didn't think about it, Jeff, and I know you're not gonna have the answer, I'm just gonna give the information. I seen where the school board said that it was a 21% increase in the internet sales, so
That's part of the reason why our
Yes,
taxes.
And look, you're gonna find, we had the PEC meeting had a meeting, the PEC had a meeting the other night, and Representative Matt came and spoke to us, and one of the things that's gonna come up in the session this time is again, talking about consolidated, sales tax. And I know that the delegation in Livingston Parish, we've got a good school board that does that, but the consolidation situation, it's gonna be a tough debate, but you know, one of the pros of that is that, you know, with the state doing the collection of all of, you know, internet sales, then there's a possibility that distribution might be more accurate. But, I mean, it's something that has to be debated in the legislature, but it is something that's gonna come up.
One more question on finance. I don't know the answer to this, I'm just asking in general in case someone knows it. Doesn't the state treasury now collect our money for the tourism board and the LEDC? Aren't they splitting that? Doesn't that check come from Louisiana? I don't think the school board collects that.
Elliot, I think the school board, I mean, the tourism is funded partially by, or is it wholly funded by the
This is the way I understand it.
well, the revenue on the hotel motel tax.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's the way I understand it, but it's split by, they don't get all of the money. The state legislature passed the act, and I can't remember the act. And I think it was in 2012, where LEDC gets, the treasury gets the money, they invest it for that year, and then in the following year, you get that money and it's split 50% down the middle between those two.
Why are we giving LEDC
Well, I don't know, but
extra funds?
ladies, would y'all research that for Mr. Delat and see where we are? Because I think that we have a contribution for the parish, if I'm not mistaken, there's a line item in the budget where we contribute money to LEDC, am I correct, Mr. R? So,
I think that's true too.
so let's find out where those dollars go, if they all go to tourism or if they're split. If y'all could research that for us, maybe the next meeting, we can have a report on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I did have one other thing, Scooter, I don't know if you remember this, she said something about, she was able to move to getting our quotes for our insurance.
Oh, yeah, for the insurance.
Where it's not during hurricane season anymore.
February 1 now,
That will help us a
Instead of
lot
August.
in getting some lower.
July, August. So
Lower
it should
rates.
help us with lower rates every year, because it's not gonna be right during the turmoil.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess this might be the appropriate time. The Finance Committee is gonna have a slight change. Mr. Mack will be replacing Mr. Harris on the Finance Committee. Mr. Ard will continue as the chairman, and Mr. Mack will serve as the vice chair of that committee. Ordinance Committee,
You gonna announce the changes after I speak?
you go ahead.
All right.
Yeah, that
So,
change,
yeah.
it's just a little minor change.
We had a meeting Tuesday, really good meeting. You guys should come, sit around, we actually had an interesting
Did we throw stuff
time.
at each other?
We did. We discussed, the noise ordinance and all the change to that. And yeah, but more importantly, and I don't want to get too much into it because it's not introduced yet, but we discussed amending the ordinance for basically for large lot subdivisions with larger tracts of land. Every all should have one of these. You should take it and look at it.
Yeah, look at it hard.
Because it has some good ideas, essentially where we could create neighborhoods with 2-3 acre lots, but kind of just dispense with, you don't actually you can have like a crushed concrete roads, you don't have to have them paved, and you can have a road, just make it more open than it used to, less dense. I think it's a great ordinance. There are some things that I want to see happen the other three members should see, but hey, that's why,
No, I'm
that's
glad
why
you-
we're there.
I'm glad you
It's all
looked- you
good.
saw it.
But everyone can just take this home with you, look at it, so we can have a fruitful discussion on it, you know, when the time comes. So this is actually gonna be good. I think that was it. You talked on this for like 45 minutes, you know.
So, and then there was the discussion, the preliminary discussion about utility permitting and work on utility permitting.
Yeah,
And we had a,
I think that's an ongoing.
so we talked about it Tuesday night in committee. Wednesday, there was a conference call, with, utility company and their fiber optics team that's getting ready to do a lot of work in the parish. I think there's gonna be a face-to-face meeting with that same group sometime next week. We kind of talked about how we're at. This is a new thing, and we're moving in a direction, but there have been problems with bores penetrating subsurface drainage, sewer, and different things that don't show up for years. And when they show up, you know, they're the size of a dump truck, and we're trying to create an environment that allows everybody in the parish to know when that work's being done and when it's finished, so those gravity drainage districts or sewer districts or municipalities or parish DPW can take all these new fancy cameras that everybody's buying, so they can go inspect that at a later date. So, but we're not trying to make the parish not, business friendly. We're including those utilities and telecommunication companies in the discussion with respect to this ordinance, so that, when it comes out of committee and to this council, it'll be something that is agreeable to business and yet still protects the parish. So that's the goal. This isn't something that's gonna happen overnight. It's an ongoing deal. As a matter of fact, we talked to Ms. Dee Dee tonight. I talked to Ms. Dee Dee tonight about one aspect of that ordinance because, we're looking for who's gonna run that deal, and permitting seems to have the software to track that stuff best. So we talked about her department's ability to address that. So at this time, I think it would be appropriate for us to do an introduction of the large subdivision ordinance. Ms. Sandy, would you read it by title and set the public hearing, please?
This will be proposed ordinance 21-02. This is an ordinance to amend chapter 125 of the Code of Ordinances of Livingston Parish, subdivision regulations, article 1 in general, section 125-1 definitions, 125-9 submittals, 125-13 procedures for subdivisions with improvements, 125-17 street standards, 125-21 servitude, rights of way, 125-26 utilities as follows. Public hearing will be Thursday, February 11th at 6 p.m.
Yeah, and I would just, like Tracy, I'd encourage all of y'all to read it. I think when you read it, you're gonna see I'll just say, Tracy, we're basically gonna end up with an 8-inch thick, limestone road as the road. And Mr. Girlinghouse, well, if it passes, Mr. Girlinghouse expressed concern that possibly there should be a moratorium before those roads are allowed to put on the overlay. And it didn't come out of committee like that. However, if it's the wishes of this council, I told him if whatever it takes to get this ordinance passed, I'm in favor of it. If the moratorium's what it takes, then I would support him. So everybody needs to think about, how that would impact their constituents, and we just had a road tax pass, and we need to think about the implication of those voters and how it would impact them. So that's the one thing that is gonna be up for debate in 2 weeks, that as you read this ordinance and think about how you would feel, with respect to that. And so you're prepared, when you come back to this council to have, some opinion or some questions to ask. There's gonna be a slight change in the ordinance committee. Mr. Harris is gonna serve on the committee, and Mr. Mack is not gonna serve on this committee. Mr. Girlinghouse is gonna remain the chairman, and Mr. King is gonna replace me as vice chairman on this committee. And, so that's what's gonna happen in ordinance. Mr. Moody, item 23.
I've got a question for the district attorney. Okay. We're on two different sides, but I want him to know that I feel he made the right call, and I want y'all to hear me say that. it's debatable the one they're gonna take to court on the money situation.
Sure.
But I think he made the right call, and I think the chairman did a good job, he made the right call also.
Thank you, thank
Yeah.
you. Councilman comments. I would like to start off by telling everyone, I think y'all, I don't know if y'all all saw the email today, that our new website is up and running. I
It's
can't tell you what the .com is, or .org, or .gov, or whatever it is, but it is up and running. Y'all all saw the email today, and I saw the preliminary pictures of it, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I think I'm gonna change mine back to the Boss Hog suit, but I mean.
Do we look fat on there?
I look chubby, I can tell you. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I look chubby. But, Mr. Harris.
There's only one thing I wanna say, and that's, excuse me. I wanna thank y'all for your prayers. It still hurts.
It's gonna hurt.
That's all I can say. Thank you.
We understand, Bubba.
Mr. Bubba, we understand. I think several of us are, I know I have. I've been to more lately than I care to for different reasons. There've been some families in the Watson area that have lost wives and
Multiple
mothers and
people.
grandmothers recently
Yes.
that, you know, is just, to me, devastating over what's going on in our community, in our state, in our country, but it is what it is, and we're gonna persevere, and, you know, but I think we all understand where you're at on this thing, and I just feel blessed that I personally have not been, you know, touched like that, but I have some friends that have, and I think we all understand that situation.
I see them every day. Yep, different ones come by.
Motion adjourned.
I got a motion adjourned by Mr.
I'd like
Delat.
to say something real quick though, and it's just real to point out. I think the perception a lot of times, before I got into government, you know, you look and you see that the certain government officials arguing, going back and forth, and I want the general public to understand, you guys look, there's no animosity here between any of us, you know, I know everybody here is a good person, everybody here wants to do what's best for their community, and I have respect for everyone here. So, and I know that none of this stuff is like personal, it's just how you feel, and you're arguing your point to where how you want your parish and your community to go forward. I just saying that for the public's sake. But just, you know, to reinforce it to you guys, I mean, I think all y'all do, you know, are credit to your district and good, and I can work with any others, and there's no animosity, there never is, and I know I don't need to tell y'all that, I'm just saying that for the public in general. You know, we really do work hard and work together to try to get things done. It just sometimes looks like we.
All I know is I'm gonna go buy me a Robert Rules of Order.
Hey, Gary,
I can pass this one down, I got it all.
I just want to say, Mr. Randy likes to get things right. And I appreciate that, because if we do it wrong, then we got to back up, and, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, what I respect about Randy is he'll argue really hard on a point
And then
he
vote on
don't
it.
even actually agree with.
That's all I do that, to make sure we get it right.
I gotta do my job.
I love that.
I have no issues with that either.
I
Motion to adjourn.
So we got a motion by Randy, second by Mr. Wascom, and Mr. Wascom loves those adjournment meetings.
I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Y'all just stroking each other on the back.